Hey everyone, I am going to show you how to work on and complete the nutrient averages calculations Excel spreadsheet. If you watch the video, you know how to access Excel for free, and you could download the spreadsheet here and then upload it to your Excel. I show that in the video, so if you need to watch that, make sure you do. Once you have your Excel spreadsheet open, I'll just show you what the goal is. So the goal is that every day, your 3 days, the food diaries that I graded, you received a grade, and they were approved to use for this next assignment, you're going to average the 3 days of data. That means in nutrition world, as a dietitian, we don't just look at one day of your diet and say, well, you need to make changes based on this one day because that day could have been a day that you were busy and you didn't quite eat as much, or a day that you weren't feeling well. That is why we have a 3 day average. And that 3 day average provides us more information about how you eat, how often you eat. Maybe these days you eat a little more and these days you eat a little less, and it all kind of averages out. Obviously, if I was a dietitian working with a client, I would want them to track more days. I would like to get a 10-day average. That would be ideal, but for our purposes, we're using a 3 day average. So what you're going to do is take your 3 days, make sure you are using the days you submitted in the Canvas assignment food diaries. Don't go to Chronometer, because what I have noticed, some students forget which days they use because they're kind of tracking multiple days as just interested in how am I doing every day, that you forgot what days you submitted to the assignment. Those are the days I'm using to compare. So I'll have your food diaries up that you submitted, and I'll look at your day one, and I'll look, does the data match? And then I'll look at your day two and your day three. So you're responsible for making sure you're using the same days and it has the same data. You didn't make any edits after you had submitted it. So use whatever you submitted. That's my word of caution. Notice that the total and the averages columns are in orange. These are designated formulas that I've created. So do not type in these cells. They will automatically total your 3 days worth of calories, for instance. We don't want a total, we want an average. So the average column will then divide that by 3 because it was 3 days. Don't touch those columns. And then if I scroll down, you'll see that I also created formulas because I want to know what percent of your calories came from carbohydrates, what percent came from fat, what percent came from added sugar. What about your saturated fat? Remember, there's dietary guidelines that go along with each of these. So I want to make sure later on in future assignments, I'll ask you to analyze these numbers. What does this actually mean? Are you within the recommended amounts, or are you below or too much? So these are also calculations. And once you start entering your data, the numbers will start to populate, and you'll see what I mean. Whatever you do, don't start typing here, because if you delete, then you've deleted a formula. Locking these cells is not an option for me because then I have to protect the spreadsheet. You'll need passwords and it just becomes really complicated. So I just try to highlight them and designate them as calculations. Okay, so that's the Excel spreadsheet. Let me show you your food diary and where you're going to get the data. Okay, so here's an example of a food diary. Remember, all your foods, your beverages are all up top. I've reviewed those. Hopefully I didn't miss any major errors. But you'll see here, these are the calories that you consumed. That's how much you ate. Okay, so this shows you your macros. It shows you how much you actually needed. So for protein, based on your weight, you needed to have 139.3 grams this person, but they only consume 53.5. I would put for day one, I'm going to make up some dates. So the first row says what day was it, and I'll just say it was 7/5. The calendar comes up when you put in a date format. So we'll just select a random day. Calories. So the calories for that day was 1,635. So I would type that 1,635. Notice it's already started to populate the columns for total and average, even though we don't have the other days in yet. Protein grams, I'll do the same. I go back and I look protein 53.5. I tried to do this in order so that you're not all over the place. Notice I'm also not using units. Their units are already here, so you don't have to put in 53.5 grams. The other thing you want to take note of is I'm not rounding. If it's 53.5, it's 53.5. It's not 54. No rounding with nutrients because we're talking about small amounts like grams, milligrams, micrograms that we should not be rounding. You would go down to complete the macros for carbs and fat. So I'm just going to try to remember these numbers, but I'm probably not. I'm just going to say 244.3 and what. Okay, so let's just say that was it. Now you would ask me, where do I find the rest of these nutrients? Well, if you scroll down, the entire food diary includes a breakdown of every nutrient. We're not doing all of them. I've only selected a few that we consider nutrients of concern in this country, and I want you to analyze. It's by carbs, lipids, protein, vitamins, and minerals. These are the units. This column, percentage, that's percent of goal. So your daily goal you met for water, for example. Water was 3,221.5 grams. Let's see if I remember that. 3,221.5 grams. Percent of goal for water is not calculated for you. It's actually on your food diary already, and it's at 87%. So this is the data we're looking for. What is the percent of goal? So 87% would go, no percentage signs, no, we're not putting grams, we're not using percentage signs, we're not doing anything. We are just entering the number. And then you would continue and fill out the rest. So you'll look for fiber, and here's fiber 42.4 at 112%. You will also do added sugars, not total. So probably one of the biggest mistakes I see is that students put in total sugar, not added. So I'm going to put in added sugar at 7.1. And then you'll continue on, do the fats, do your omega-6s. But notice what's happening over here. It's starting to already do some calculations for you. Let me do saturated fat so we can kind of fill that in. Saturated fat for this person was 9.3. So I am going to enter 9.3. Make sure that you press your arrow button or your down button so that it kind of activates the cell and includes it in the formula. If you just type it in, like let's say I wrote in 45.2 and didn't push an arrow button like you're going to do in the day 3, if you don't move it over, then it's not going to get totaled. So like if I'm here at 23.2, I, I can go down and now I could see it that it changed. The numbers changed. That's really what I'm looking at to make sure your data is correct for each day. Then I would go to day 2 and start filling it in. But notice what's happening down here. Now I know, oh, I had 60% of my calories that came from carbs. I had 30% come from fat. Notice I didn't do protein because protein is based on your weight. You're going to analyze protein differently. Um, Added sugar, there's actually a recommendation from the World Health Organization that said less than 5% of your calories should come from added sugar. United States says less than 10%. They let us eat more added sugar. We don't want to. Ultimately, we want zero. That would be a nice. So the closer you are to zero for added sugar is ideal. Same with saturated fat. We say up to 10% of your calories should come from saturated fat. We don't want 10%. We want zero. But they're saying we're going to give you a limit, and that limit is 10%. In this example, we have someone that ate a lot of saturated fat, and so it's really high for day 1. But remember, it's an average. So maybe on day 2 it was really low, and day 3 it was low. And so the average of the 3 days gets lower and lower, and there you may end up less than 10% of the calories. So this is a spreadsheet you're using your food diaries to complete. I highlighted water, biggest error. I highlighted added sugar, biggest error. Other error, people don't fill out percent of goal for some reason. It's here for you. You don't need to do any math. There's no math. All you're doing is transferring data from day 1, day 2, and day 3. Let the Excel spreadsheet do the math for you. Okay, so if there are any questions about this, you can feel free to email me. We can always set up office hours by your email request, and then I can set up a time, but I do not do office hours in the evening. So if this is due by 11:59 p.m. and you're working on it and struggling at 10 p.m., I'm asleep. Okay? All right. So any questions, feel free to email. Thank you.